Hey everyone, today we will be exploring C++, and this is just a basic introduction to the language itself. So the first thing we're going to do is install C++. So ironically enough, you actually don't need to install it if you're on a PC, on a Mac or Linux because they're Unix based. What you will need to download, however, is certain extensions. Now you don't need to download these, but I would prefer it if you did because it would help with coding. So you're going to go to extensions, and by the way, this is only for people who are using Visual Studio, and you're going to want to get the Microsoft extension for C++. Okay. All right. So the next thing you're going to want to do is open up a file, and let's just call it main.c++. The first thing I'm going to be explaining to you guys is how to run a program. So to do this, let's first write some dummy code. So the first thing you'll want to do is import a library that's going to allow for an IO stream. We're going to get into the usage of this a bit later. So I'm going to go include IO stream. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about using namespace std. So what using namespace std does is it tells the compiler how you want the code to be outputted or how you want strings to be written. The next thing we're going to want to do is create a function that's going to run. So I'm going to call it int main. The reason why we're calling it main is because the compiler reads that or runs that function first. And over here, all I'm just going to do is I'm going to print out a hello world. So to do that, we're going to write COUT, and then we're going to have two arrows going this way. And we're going to type in hello world. And we're also going to want to return an integer because and we're going to just return 0. We return an integer because for every function, you need to return a value. Okay? Now the next thing you're going to want to do is just open up your terminal. All right? So in order to run a file, you need to first of all type in make and then the file itself. So it's make main.c++. Make, nothing needs to be made. Okay, wait. No, sorry. The thing you're going to do first is this. All right, yeah. So the issue with that was that I included .c++. We're going to just go make main. All right. So now, as you can see, for a brief moment, it actually compiles the language into bytecode. I'm going to just open this up. I guess that. So yeah, as you can see, you don't understand what's actually happening here. But what happens is that since C++ is a compiled language, we'll take the code and convert it into bytecode. That bytecode can now be run via a terminal. So to do this, I'm going to go /main. All right, and yeah, now it just prints out hello world. To make this look neater, I'm also going to just print out a new line. So I can just do that by typing in the cout, the 2 dashes, and /n. All right, now you might be wondering, do I have to delete this file? Absolutely not. We can simply just type in make main, all right, and it's just going to update the file, and now we can simply just run it once more, and now it just prints out. All right, so the next thing we're going to be learning about is variables. So now you might be wondering that in a machine, there's often user data that's stored. To store it, you have to create a variable. Now there's different types of variables and they are all suited for your needs. We will be going over 3 variables right now. First is integer. So integers are any whole number. So the way you write it is that you write the integer, then you write your variable name. So I'm going to call it integer. All right, the next thing, and then I'm just going to make it a value. Let's suppose if you want to know someone's age. So the age is 22. All right, the next variable we will be working on is called strings. So strings are any sort of text. So to create a string, you will type string and then your variable. So I'm going to call it text and just any value. So you can use double quotes and single quotes. This is a string. All right. The next thing we're going to be working on is a float. A float is a decimal number. It's as simple as that. So floats can be used for money. They can also be used for, I guess, like more precise calculations. So to create a float, you just type in float. All right. And then you're just going to type in the float. So let's just call it money. All right, and that's going to be equal to 22.5, I guess. Okay, you can also go ahead and even add some of these together. So the only variables of different data types that you can add together include integers and floats. Why? Because they basically share the same like overall architecture, because they're like, you know, it's a decimal number and a whole number, right? So ideally what's going to happen is that when you add them together, it's going to be a float itself. So we can actually look at that right here. So I can go ahead and just write count or cout and the two arrows, and I can just add the integer plus the money. All right. The next thing I'm just going to do is just create a new line, /n. All right, and now we can just go make main, and then /main. So yeah, as you can see, we get 44.5. So that's pretty straightforward. We can also convert data types with other data types. This is very helpful, especially when you want to represent data or you want to include an integer with a number, etc., etc. Okay, so to do this, we will be taking a string and we will be converting it into an integer. So this is how it works. So I'm just going to remove all of this. So what I'm going to do is just make this a string. I'm going to call it string integer. I'm going to add two. I'm going to add some quotation marks. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable, and it's going to be an integer, and it's going to be called new int. And it's going to be equal to the, so it's going to be equal to the integer, but I'm going to wrap it around in a function called stoi. Stoi, like that. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to just do is I'm just going to go ahead and print this out, because why not? Underscore int. Right. Oh yeah, by the way, for any of you guys wondering, you guys can actually print out more than one thing in one line. So it's better practice to just have two more greater than signs and then just have the new line. So let's just make this and /main. And as you can see, there's 22. All right. Now the next thing we're going to be doing is converting the string to an integer. When converting to a string is a bit more simpler than converting from a string to an integer. So the way it's going to work is that we're going to first of all create a variable. So I'm just going to call it string str, and it's going to be equal to the integer. All right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around in a function. This function is just going to be called to_string, and then I'm just going to print this out. Str and new line. All right. I'm just gonna let that. Let's put just semicolon. There is a semicolon there. Oh, not here. Oh yeah. Speaking of, guys, what you guys might be wondering here is that when you compile your code, it actually checks all the errors for you. So that's actually better because then it can run faster because now it knows there's no errors. All right. So I'm just gonna make that again. /main, and boom, we get 20. So for loops are a loop, and the way for loops work is that a piece of the code will keep on running over and over again for a certain period of time. So first of all, we're going to talk about how long the for loop is going to run. To do this, I'm going to create an integer, and let's just call it the time run and set it equal to 5. So int time run is equal to 5. All right, now I'm going to create my for loop. So to do this, I'm going to type in for, I'm going to have a pair of regular brackets and a pair of curly braces. So similar to how this main function has two curly braces, that's the same way the for loop is going to work. All right, now you might be wondering that for how long will the for loop run? How will I explain the logic to it? To do this, I'm going to create another variable integer called I, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the condition as to which it has to keep running. So I'm going to call it I greater than the time run. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about after the for loop has run once, what's going to happen to it. So what's going to happen to it is that I is going to be added to 1. So to do this, I'm going to do I plus plus. You can also do I plus equal to 1, but I plus plus looks cooler. Let's face it. All right. So inside of here, I can do any sort of C++ code I want. I can even access variables that are over here. So for the sake of simplicity, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to print out hello from the loop. Hello from the loop. Yeah. You can also just do /n like this if you guys want. Let's go clear. So make main. What's the error? Oh, no, for a semicolon. All right. Make main. And then we're going to go /main. And boom, we get 5 loops. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to learn about is functions. So what functions are is, well, you've already seen a function before. All right. So what a function is simply just a block of code. All right. But the way a function works is that you can call this block of code later on inside of your code instead of having to constantly rewrite it. Allow me to explain. So the first thing you're going to do is specify the value that you want returned. So let's suppose if I'm building a calculator, okay? So the value that I would want returned is an integer. Okay, it could also be a float technically. But for the sake of this, let's just go with an integer, okay? The next thing we're going to want to do is call the integer. So I'm going to call it add. All right. Now we have a fully functioning function. No pun intended. But it doesn't have any values in it, because when you want to add, you usually want to add 2 or more variables together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 arguments. One is going to be int var1, and the second one is going to be int var2. All right, and now what I'm going to simply do is just return, let's see here, yeah, and I'm simply going to return var1 plus var2. So this is a function in a nutshell. You can also call it a method. I frankly could care less. So now you might be wondering, okay, well, if I were to run this, how do I call it? So to do this, we would have to just simply type in our function name. So it's add a pair of regular brackets, and then add in our arguments. Make sure to have a semicolon as well. So it's as if I want to add 5 and 10. All right, now let's just run this. So now you might be wondering, how come 15 didn't come up? That's because even though we have this value, we haven't actually printed it out yet. So to do this, we can use scout. All right, and that should work. So yeah, as you can see, we got 15. All right, there's another way you can also do this, is that you can store it inside of its very own variable. But make sure that the variable that it's being stored in is the same as the value that's being returned. The value here is being returned as an int, so I'm going to call it int var, and set it equal to add 5, 11. The next thing I'm going to do is just print it out. So count var. And wait, no, I haven't run it properly. All right, make main ./main. Boom, we got 16. All right, we can also just like add in a plus, like a new line /n. Yeah, make main. Yeah, boom. All right, now the next thing we're going to be exploring is methods. Okay, So the way that arrays work is actually pretty straightforward. Oftentimes you have more than one values that you want to set to a variable. So in order to do this, you really can't. However, there's a data structure called arrays that helps solve your problems. So arrays can come in all sorts of data types: strings, integers, floats, etc. So the first thing we want to do is specify the type. The next thing you're going to want to do is specify the name of your array. So I'm going to call my array just array. The next thing you're going to want to do is specify the length of your array. So let's suppose if you want 5 values. All right, and that's it. You can also write it like this, where there's no value, but then immediately after set the values equal to it. For example, since this is an integer, and let's suppose if I want to store kids' ages. So 11, 12, 9, 4, 18. All right, and that's equal to 5. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just print this out. Array. Okay, and if I were to just make this, and the /main. All right, so as you can see, we've actually successfully created an array. However, you might be noticing that there's only a memory address. To fix this, what you can do is just view the array like a certain index. You can also use a for loop, which I will get to in a moment. All right, and I'm just going to print that out. So we got the 0th index, which is the first index. The way code works is that it starts off from 0 and all the way till the end. You can also write it, as I explained earlier, like this. You can go like this, or you're going to have to still specify the size. And then what you can do is you can populate it. So you can go like array 0 is equal to, 11. Array 1 is equal to 12, and so on. So this way also works, and it's completely the same. However, it's a lot cleaner to do it in the first way. And now I'm going to show you guys how to work with arrays within a for loop. So the way you work with arrays in a for loop is like this. So the first thing you're going to do is create a for, like you're going to go for, create the integer, as I explained earlier, int I is equal to 0. All right, the next thing you're going to want to do is figure out the size of your array. So I just have written this manually, so it's just 5. All right, so I is greater than 5, and then we just go I plus plus. All right, and then over here, all I'm just going to do is just print out the array within a certain index. All right, there we go. This should work. I hope it works. Yeah, as you can see, we got every single. Okay, you know what? That doesn't look very neat. /n. I'm gonna go make main. I'm just go ./main. So yeah, you can see 11, 12, 9, 4, 18. So that's how you guys use an array with a for loop. Also, for any of you guys wondering if you guys want to figure out the size of the array without the knowing it predetermined, the way it works is that you would take size of, all right, it's this inbuilt function, and you would take the array and then divide it by the size of the array at the 0th index. Size of array, 0th index. So what this does is figure out the entire array in terms of bytes. Then it divides it by the value per byte, or per value, and that gets you the overall value. So make main and ./main, and as you can see, it gives you the exact same result. All right. Also, just to let you guys know, you can also use arrays inside of your functions. You guys will have to modify you will have to write it in a bit of a different way, which I'm going to explain to you guys right now. So the first thing you're going to want to do is type in the integer and the variable, and you're going to have to put 2 square brackets. That's it, actually. And then you would have to put in the index at which it's indexing in. But that's all you have to do. You don't have to specify the size of the array itself, although you technically can. Although it's very bad practice to, as different arrays have different sizes. The final thing we will be working on is input and output within the within C++. So we've actually worked on output already by using the count method and then inserting two greater than signs and whatever you want to have printed out. But now you might be wondering, how do I get input from the user? So to do this, the first thing you're going to want to do is predetermine what sort of data you want from the user. So let's suppose if I want the age of a person, okay? So I'm just going to I'm going to create int age. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this method called sin or kin. It's one or the other, I don't really know. Then you're going to add two of these less than signs. So the reason why I use these less than signs is because the age value, I'm going to type in age here, is that the age value is going to the input or the IO stream. All right. Now the next thing we can just do is we can just print this out. So we can go count the age is, and the age itself. All right. And I'm just going to clear this, make main, and /main. So I'll tell us if my age is 55 and the age is 55. You can also, so yeah, that, my friends, in a nutshell, is the basics of C++. I hope you guys like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down any questions you guys may have.